From the front of the truck, the engine, compartment, everything, all the way up to the tires. And then when you finish with that section, if you're here for a Class A license, they're going to tell you, okay, now I want you to come inspect all the coupling devices. And then when you finish with that section, they're going to tell you they want you to check the lights, they want you to check the inside of the truck, and they want you to do a safe start. That would be the Card A. If you're here, who's here for a Class B? Class B is okay, so y'all are only gonna have to do the front and the inside if you get Card A. Card B, if you're here for a Class A license, if you get B, they're gonna tell you, look, I want you to inspect everything from right here, from the door to the back of the truck, including all the coupling devices, and then the inside, the lights in that one. That would be Card B. There's 3 sections to the card if you get A, B, or C. If you're here for a Class A license. If you're here for a B license, there's 2 sections per the card. If you get Card C, they're gonna tell you, look, I want you to do the coupling devices, I want you to inspect the trailer, and I want you to do everything on the inside of the truck.
So the air brake includes the inside of the truck?
Yes. Guys, the air brakes is nothing by itself, guys. There is no test that says, hey, I want you to do the air brakes. The air brakes is part of the interior inspection, okay? It's just like you checking this door or just checking the step. It's just another part on the truck that has to be tested, okay? It doesn't have its own test. If you get the full truck and trailer, well, then they just told you what they want you to do, right? Full truck and trailer. That means everything on the outside and everything on the inside, everything. So you just have to pay attention to which card you grab, because when they're reading you the instructions, if you don't hear what they want you to do, how are you gonna know where you're gonna start, right? So if you don't hear them, you don't understand them when they're telling you, they might be talking too fast or too low. Hey, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Can you repeat that to me? Ask them, you know. Make sure that you're understanding what they want you to do. Because once they tell you it's time to get started, you have 45 minutes to complete this. It doesn't matter which card you pick, it's 45 minutes. Guys, if you get A, B, or C, you should finish in under 30 minutes. If you get it the full card, it might take you every minute of 45 and even maybe a little bit more. But it's okay if you go over. They've been giving people a chance. If they see that you're doing a good job, and it's gonna take you maybe 50, 55 minutes, but you're doing such a good job, they're gonna try to let you make it. They're gonna try to let you pass this test the day you test, okay? So don't get in a hurry. Make sure you pass this, because if you don't pass the pre-trip, you don't move on to anything else. If you fail the pre-trip, they're just gonna tell you, okay, get another appointment and come back and try it again. And y'all know how long those take, right? 1.5 months to 2 months. So I tell everybody, this is one of the most important things when it comes to this test, is this pre-trip inspection. A lot of people worry about the driving and stuff. Well, how are you gonna get to the driving if you can't pass the pre-trip, you know? One step at a time, right? I'm gonna get started. I'm gonna start with the front of the truck. Like they tell me, hey, I want you to do Card A. I want you to inspect everything from the front of the vehicle, the lights, the reflectors, all the way to the axle, right here, which includes the brakes, the tires, and the suspension. So I'm gonna start. When they tell you to start, just come and stand on the front of the truck, guys, and just look at it and tell them, look, I'm looking at the front of the truck, and right away I can see that there is no major damage to this truck anywhere. When it comes to the front of the vehicle section, guys, it's just something real quick. It's nothing very, very detailed. It's just, look, I'm looking at it. There's no major damage to the truck. Nothing is falling off or dragging. I'm also going, you know what, let me back up, guys. I'm getting ahead of myself here. When they tell you to do this inspection, guys, they tell you they only want you to inspect the driver's side of the truck. Unless this truck has something that's different or unique on the other side, then you go and point it out, but you come right back to the driver's side. And they want you to make sure that you touch whatever you're talking about. And if you can't touch it because it's hot, point at it. That's what they want. Because if you don't touch it or you don't point at it, they're not gonna give you credit. They're gonna say you didn't touch it. I don't care. You told me everything, but you didn't touch it. That's all they gotta say. Because they tell you, I want you to touch it or point at it. If not, you will not get credit for it. That's simple. So I'm looking at the front of the vehicle everywhere. I can see that there's no major damage. Nothing is falling off or cracked or broken anywhere. I'm gonna also check the truck for leaks. I'm gonna look underneath the truck and make sure that I don't see any puddles down there, nothing dripping from the truck anywhere, the engine oil, coolant, hydraulic fluids, right? Stuff like that. And I'm also going to listen to make sure that I don't hear any air leaking from the hoses. If you listen, there's nothing leaking. Once I check for leaks, I'm also gonna go ahead and take a quick look to make sure that I don't have any flat tires anywhere on the truck. And you just look down the driver's side, that's it. Right there, I covered the first section that said front of the vehicle on that piece of paper earlier. The next thing it says lights and reflectors now. Okay, so look, this one right here is my headlight. I can see that the headlight is securely mounted. It's not cracked or broken. There's no moisture inside the headlight. It's the correct color, which is clear or white. And this headlight right here has two functions. It has a low beam and a high beam that I have to make sure that they're both working. You're not gonna turn it on right now, you're gonna do that later. Right now you're just telling them that. If you look right here, this is my left turn signal. This one is my right turn signal. They're both securely mounted. They're not cracked or broken. There's no moisture inside of them. They're the correct color, which is amber. And they have two functions as well. They're turn signals and they're four-way flashers. If you look on the top, those are my clearance lights. Some of y'all might call them marking lights. That's okay. My clearance lights, look at them. They're securely mounted. They're not cracked or broken. There's no moisture inside. They're clean. There's the correct color amber. And it's just one function, just clearance lights. So right there, look, I talked about all the lights, but it says lights and reflectors. Do we have reflectors?
No.
No reflectors. So simply tell them, hey, look, there are no reflectors for me to inspect. And you just talked about reflectors. It's that easy. Next on the list, it says, check the engine compartment. So you open up the hood and you start talking about everything in the engine compartment. Guys, I know there's quite a bit of y'all today. Just kind of try to keep it as spread as you can. I mean, if you need to get a close-up, take a picture, but stand right back as I'm going through the parts if you want to. You got 4 fluids. You got 4 parts to the engine. And you got to talk about the hoses on both sides of the truck. So the 4 fluids. You got the power steering fluid right here. If you just point at it and say, look, that's my power steering. You can either say reservoir or that's the little tank, whichever one you want to use. But look, it's a little power steering reservoir right here, which is securely mounted because nothing is loose, right? Nothing is cracked or broken. And nothing is leaking from it because it has a fluid inside. If you see right here, you can see that my cap is on tight, it's not missing. And right here on the side, it says add and full. I'm gonna make sure that I have the correct level, that it's in between the 2 lines, in between the add and the full. And you're done talking about it. You don't open it, you don't do nothing. They're there to listen to you guys, that's it. Look, right here, this is the dipstick where I would check the engine oil. That one right there. When it comes to the oil, I would pull it out, find the gauge right here on the bottom. Well, actually, what do? We always clean it one time, right? Most of us. And then we put it back, and then we pull it out again, right? And then you find the little gauge to make sure that the oil is in between the 2 lines, the add and the full. Once we know we have the correct level, we would put it right back in and look around the engine to make sure that no oil is leaking from it one more time. You don't have to do it, you just tell them that. The windshield washer fluid, securely mounted, not cracked or broken. If you follow the holes all the way down, you can see that nothing is leaking from it. The cap is not missing. This one does not have the gauge. So here, what I'm going to do is every chance I get, I'm going to top it off, keep it as full as I can, because it doesn't have a marker, right? 1, 2, 3. Look at number 4. It's on the other side. You come to this side and you point at the engine coolant right here. Look, securely mounted, not cracked or broken, nothing is leaking from it. If you look right here, there's a little sight glass. If you see the fluid up to that level, that's how I know that it's full. And my cap's not missing. 4 fluids. Now you got the 4 parts. Right here, this is your alternator. It looks just like a car alternator, guys. That's the alternator. It's securely mounted. Nothing is cracked or broken. I'm gonna make sure that the alternator is working. I'm gonna also check that the cables are connected to the alternator, that there's no rust or corrosion on the connections. And this is a belt-driven alternator. You gotta tell them all that stuff. That's what they wanna hear. Right below it, look, if you see this hose right here, you follow the hose, follow it straight to the water pump, right there. You can see right where the hose is connected, guys. It's connected to the water pump. So you point at it and you say, look, that's where my water pump is at. Right away I can see that it's securely mounted. I can see that nothing is cracked or broken. I can see that nothing is leaking from it underneath. I'll make sure that it's working. And it's also a belt-driven part. Look at my hoses. They're all secured with all the clamps. None of the hoses are cut, frayed, cracking anywhere, no abrasions, no air leaking from the hoses, and no fluid leaking from the hoses. And you're done with this side. You got 1, 2, 3, 4 things to talk about, and you're done with this side. That's it. Nothing else is different on this side, guys.
Do we need to mention on the belt that there is no...
We're not there yet. Have I talked about the belts? Guys, was I talking about the alternator or was I talking about the belts? Huh? Okay? Because he's asking me. It's because he says, you didn't say nothing about the belts. I'm not talking about the belts. I'm talking about the alternator. See, that's what happens. You start telling, hey, look, this is my alternator and it's belt driven and the belt's not cut or frayed. So did you talk about the alternator or did you talk about the belt? Because really you didn't tell me nothing about either one of them. See? And that's what happens on the test. One part at a time. I haven't got to the belts yet. I talked about the alternator. Look, these are the belts. I'm gonna make sure that they're not loose, they're not cut, they're not frayed. See, now I talked about the belts. See the difference between the 2 ways? If you get over there and you start talking about them one thing, but you jump to the other one, that's why the lady, if you fail, she's gonna tell you, you weren't telling me enough. Because you're trying to connect this part to this part, and this part to this part, and this one to this one, right. And you're not telling them enough about one part or the other. Right. So you have to just finish. Look, this is the steering column. I'm gonna check everything on the steering column. We gotta do it one part at a time, guys. So, belts. I will push on them, making sure that they're not loose, that they do not have more than 3/4 of an inch play, that there are no cuts, no frays, no cracks, abrasions, rubbing, worn. There's a lot of things you can tell them about a belt, right? Tell them at least 2 or 3 things, guys. But most important, that if you push on them, they're not more than 3/4 of an inch loose. Air compressor. This is my air compressor right here, this box. Look, it's securely mounted. Nothing is cracked or broken. If you listen, there is no air leaking from it. And that is a gear-driven air compressor. And I'm gonna also make sure that it's working correctly. I never said working correctly before, guys. But one of the lady over there is being so picky because she's brand new. And the book says working correctly. And if you don't say working correctly, and you get her, everybody else will pass you, but she will fail you. So we're not going to take chances anymore.
Right.
Working correctly on every single part that you have to check.
Perfect.
Next, now I'm going to check all the hoses on this side of the engine. Look at all the clamps, all the fittings, all the hoses. Look, they're all securely mounted. None of the hoses have cuts, fraying, abrasions, bulges, cracking. None of them are leaking air. None of them are leaking fluid. Same thing you told them about the other side, you come and tell them about this side. Because they're different hoses. So right there we talked about 1, 2, 3, 4 fluids. The alternator, the water pump, the belts, and the air compressor. Those are the 4 parts to the engine. And we check the hoses on that side and we check the hoses on this side. So that is the engine compartment. Where it says engine compartment, that's what you need to tell them. After engine compartment, now it says the steering components. Okay, this one is my steering column. Look, it's securely mounted on both ends. It's straight, no twists or bends or cracks anywhere. If you look right here, you can see where it's full of grease. Right here at the end of it, there's a U-joint that I also have to make sure that it's full of grease and that it's not cracked or broken or loose or damaged. That it's also securely mounted. This one's my steering box. Look at it, it's securely mounted. Nothing is cracked or broken anywhere, and there is no power steering fluid leaking from the steering box. Everything from here to here that turns these tires is the steering linkage. And you just point at all these parts like this, guys. If you've been watching videos, yes, this is the pitman arm, drag link, control arms, tie rods, ball joints. There's a lot of parts. You don't have to waste your time and tell them all that. You can just say, look, I'm gonna check all the steering linkage from here to here. Look, every single nut and bolt is tight and secure. The castle nuts are not loose. The pins are not missing. Everything is full of grease on the parts. None of them are twisted or bent or cracked or broken anywhere. These are the power steering hoses, right? Look, they're the ones that are coming out of the little reservoir. Look at this one. It comes right back to here, to the steering box. If you look at the other hose, it comes this way, but it loops around and it connects right there. Right inside there, guys, that's where you have your power steering pump. If y'all want to look, y'all can go ahead and look. But right inside there, you'll see where the hose is connected. That's where the power steering pump is at. I'm telling you one thing though, guys. I know that if you look, it makes you feel more comfortable. But the day of the test, you don't have to stick your hands in there, guys. Just like I said, look, at the end of this hose, right inside here, that's good enough. That's good enough. That's all you have to do. What am I doing? I'm pointing at it. That's what they asked me to do. Now I'm going to tell you that I'm going to make sure that it's securely mounted. It's not cracked or broken. It's not leaking any power steering fluid because we can see that nothing is leaking. I'll make sure that it's in working condition and it's gear driven. That's what they want to hear. It's not so much about you doing this.
Right.
They don't care if you put your hands on it or not, except for just to touch it or point at it. That's it. We had a guy that was actually trying to take parts on and off because he said he had already failed one time with somebody else and they told him that he wasn't working on the truck. BS, guys. Don't listen to people like that, man. Those are all the parts to the steering that I just covered. So right there, I'm done with everything that had to do with the steering. Now you start talking about suspension parts. Well, everything is on the frame, right? So point at the frame. Hey, look, I'm looking at the frame. I can see where the frame is straight. It's not twisted or bent or cracked or broken anywhere. There should not be any illegal welds on the frame. And as you can see, everything is securely mounted onto the frame. Right here on the front. Spring mount or spring hangers. You can call them whichever name you want. There's one right here on the front. And there's another one over here on the back. You really can't see the one on the back, guys. But what did I just do right there? I pointed in the direction where it's at. That's all they want to see. I'm going to make sure that both the front and the back spring mounts are securely mounted, that they're not cracked or broken. That's it. Leaf springs. Securely mounted, the ends and the middle. If you look at them, they're straight. They're not shifted, they're not cracked or broken anywhere, and none of them are missing. The U-bolts, the 2 U-bolts right here. You point at them. If you look at my U-bolts, you can see on the bottom where the nuts are tight, and the U-bolts are not cracked or broken. The shock absorbers. Look, securely mounted on the top and the bottom. Nice and straight, not twisted or bent, and there's nothing leaking from my shock absorber. Those are all the suspension parts. Once you're done with suspension, now you move on to the brake parts. Brake hose. I'm going to make sure that the brake hose is securely mounted with the fittings on both ends. And I'm going to check the hose that it doesn't have any cuts or abrasions or fraying or cracking. And I'm going to listen to make sure that there's no air leaking from the brake hose. The ABS wire, right there, right next to the hose. I'm going to make sure that the ABS wire is secured on both ends, that there's no rust or corrosion on the connections, and I'm going to make sure that it's not cut or damaged anywhere in between the 2 connections. Hey, you know what? I'm sorry. Somebody turned the steering wheel. But guys, in the back, you know what? Honestly, it's not about looking at the parts, guys. Like I keep trying to tell y'all, it's about you listening. About you listening and learning what you have to tell them.
Right.
Because anybody could come and point at a part and say the name to the part.
Right.
But are you telling them what they want to hear about the part? That's the important thing. So, brake chamber. Securely mounted. It's not cracked or broken anywhere. You can see the clamp is not missing. And if I'm listening, there is no air leaking from the brake chamber. Slack adjuster and push rod. Every time you get close, man, you're not even going to know what you're looking at on your camera. It's best that you keep it up here. Slack adjuster and push rod. Securely mounted, not cracked or broken. The pins are not missing. Nothing is loose. Everything is full of grease. If I were to go inside and release the brake and pull on it, I should not have more than 1 inch of plate. And that's what you need to tell them. On the inside in here, you got the brake drums. You could also see it through right here, through these holes. Right there, inside there, that's the brake drum. You can point from wherever. It's the same thing, guys. I'll get out of the way, I'll leave the stick right there. Those are the brake drums, the one that the stick is touching. And if you look inside the brake drums, you can see the brake shoes or the brake linings. They're not brake pads, guys. Brake pads go on rotors. Brake shoes or brake linings go on drums, okay? The brake drums are securely mounted. They're not cracked or broken. They don't have no holes, and they're not worn out. On the inside, I can see the brake lining or the brake shoe. And you just point at the inside of the drum. I can see that they're securely mounted. They're not cracked or broken. They are not dangerously thin. That's what they want to hear, that they're not dangerously thin or that they're not completely worn out. There's still at least 1/4 of an inch left on them. If I look at the drum and if I look at the brake shoes, I can see that they're clean, that they do not have any oil or grease on them. And those are all your brake parts. And once you're done with brakes, tells you to start checking the tires. So guys, everybody just scoot back so everybody, and just kind of move that way so everybody can see the tire parts. It's not much to them. Tires, guys. This is not a recap tire because I'm not allowed recaps on the front. That's what you need to tell them. I need to check the condition of the tire to make sure that I have at least 4 32 of an inch thread still left on the tire. That the tire is wearing evenly and that there are no abrasions or bulges or cuts anywhere on the tire. The valve stem has to be securely mounted, not cracked or damaged. I got to listen to make sure that it's not leaking any air. And if I put the pressure gauge on it, I got to check that this tire has at least 100 pounds of pressure. If you can't remember the number, tell them I got to make sure that it's filled to the manufacturer's specification. One or the other. The rims. If you look at the rim, it's securely mounted. I'm going to check the inside and the outside to make sure that they're not cracked or broken, that they do not have any illegal welds on them, that they're not bent, twisted, damaged in any way, guys. The lug nuts. Look at them. None of the lug nuts are missing. They're not cracked or damaged. There is no shiny metal on them or rustros, indicators that they would be loose. The stud on the inside. If you look at the studs, they're all straight. None of them are twisted or bent or cracked or worn out or stripped. In here, and just go like that, I have a hub oil seal that I have to inspect that the hub oil seal is securely mounted, not cut or damaged, and as you can see, it's not leaking any oil. If I take the cap off and look inside the hub, it has to have the correct amount of oil. It has to be somewhere in between the add and the full line. And those are all the tire parts, guys, right there. And every single one of those is on this piece of paper, guys. Look, I just did everything one part at a time. I didn't join, the only two that I joined together is the slack adjuster and the push rod. But it's even joined together right here too, just so you know. Because those, they always work together. So, other than that, it's one at a time, telling them everything. Securely mounted, not cracked, not broken, not leaking, no rust, corrosion, anything that you would check on it. Right here, they told me I want you to do from the front to the axle. I'm done. When you stop, they're going to ask you, okay, hey, are you done? Well, if you're not 100% sure if you are or not, turn around and look back. Grab the list and make sure that you covered everything, every single section. The suspension, the brakes, the tires, the engine, the steering. If you know you're done, yes, I'm done. Tell them. Okay, well, if you're done, they're going to tell you, okay, now I want you to do this. Now I want you to do that. And you just got to keep listening to them because they're going to give you more instructions. They'll tell you when they're done.